My name is Anne Wood. I'll be chairing this workshop. A warm welcome to everybody who's been attending the annual conference. By Friday, Stand Up to Racism had 1,300 people booked for the event. Let's hope they've all turned up and heard some of the plenaries that have been on, and that they've all been thinking long and hard about how we can defeat racism and discrimination in society. So the conference is mobilising the anti-racist majority, and sometimes it can be hard to remember that we are the majority, and looking at how do we defeat Johnson's racist offensive. But this workshop here, and thank you to everyone who's here, is the Love Football, Hate Racism, Defending #TakeTheKnee workshop. We've got five, or maybe only four, because I think we're missing one, speakers, and I thank you for our panel that you're here with us. Steve Goodsall from Show Racism the Red Card. I believe you're the Southern Region Manager, Steve, but you'll tell us a bit about that in a moment. We have Shaka Hislop coming to us from the States. Thank you, Shaka. I'm sure most of you know Shaka, former professional goalkeeper for West Ham, Newcastle and Reading, and also Honorary President of Show Racism the Red Card. And we have another Welsh contingent. Thank you, Neville, for joining us. Neville Southall, former goalkeeper, international goalkeeper for Wales and for Everton. Tracy Brown was due to be here. She's the co-chair of Chelsea Pride. Unfortunately, she was taken ill yesterday, but she has sent something for me to read out to us all. So thank you for that. Our panel members have 5 minutes to share their thoughts with us, and then I'll open up to speakers from the floor. Speakers from the floor, you have 3 minutes each, as we need to hear from as many people as possible. I'll then come back to our panel speakers for 2 minutes at the end, but Shaka has to go, so I'm sure that we can reflect on some of the messages that Shaka's given us then. Try to keep to time, but please feel, especially if you're coming from the floor, please don't be daunted and think, oh, you know, it's not for me to speak about what we're doing with our clubs. This is a safe place for us to talk about and share ideas about the work that is going on with fans, clubs, Show Racism the Red Card, and all anti-discriminatory and anti-racism movement together, because when we work together, that's when we change things for the good. This is my first time to host such an event. I'm very proud to be part of it. I became in the football side of the anti-racist movement, having been part of the anti-racist movement since the anti-Nazi days in the 90s. I'm a Cardiff City season ticket holder and a fan, and I've been working with Swansea City fans and our clubs together to see how we could work together to fight against racism. I'm sure most of you know there's huge rivalry between us. We are the South Wales derby, and yet today at our derby game, which Cardiff's just lost, I didn't even see the final score, our clubs together have made a joint pledge under the banner, Rivals on the Pitch, United Against Racism. In March, that was publicised by the media, but of course there were no fans at the games then. But today, the respective managers, alongside 3 Swans players and 3 Cardiff City players, have gone on the big screen, on video, sharing that pledge. So all of the fans have seen it, and that's a really powerful message that even 2 rival clubs can come together in the fight against racism and discrimination. I think we have the video, so you may be able to see it a little later, and I'm sure we'll hear from the floor a bit more about the background of how that came about, because a lot of work has been done with both the clubs to get to having this video shown at the match today. And I'm pleased to say that work is ongoing, and we've got quite a few ideas about other ways that we can get the message out through football. My view is that it's been players continuing to take the knee at games that has massively helped us as fans say to our clubs, we want you to do more than that. We want your players to take the knee, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you brave football players who do decide to take the knee. This is very player-led that it's been continued despite opposition from even our own Prime Minister and Home Secretary. So I think it's been an opening for some of us to feel that we could work more closely with the clubs to work together to fight racism and discrimination. So, Steve, I'm going to hand over to you for your 5 minutes, if that's okay. And thank you very much. I think you're all good to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to start off on a somber note by passing my condolences to the family and friends of David Amess MP, who was murdered on Friday, which was just less than a mile from where I live. And it's really had a huge impact on the local community here. And David was a Conservative, and we've had some issues with Conservatives, particularly some of the language that's been used by the Prime Minister. But I think at this time we need to put party politics aside and remember someone who's been lost to us. And the fact that someone has done this during the day at a time when the public are working with their local MPs, it's a terrible time. Ironically, at this very time that this happened, another Conservative MP, Caroline Noakes, was taking place in workshops that we were delivering with Southampton Football Club. A full day of workshops down at St Mary's, which included first team players from the men's and the women's team, the Community Foundation, and Caroline was there as well, taking part and extolling the good practice that was taking place. And Caroline is a big supporter of Show Racism, the Red Card. The work that we do is needed ever more than before. The death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd last year has highlighted obviously the things that have been going on for many years that we're very aware of. But that death of George Floyd, that opened up the consciousness of companies and members of the public. It kind of woke up the silent majority to stand up and take notice and demand more action. And that's filtering through into football. Clubs are much more responsible these days. And as Shaka will know, and Neville, we're doing work with clubs the length and breadth of the UK. One such club is West Ham, who deserve huge credit for working with Show Race the Red Card, not just on a one-day event, but a series of school workshops that we've been delivering now with them for almost 4 years. And they've gone out with us to get external funding to be able to deliver this. And I'm pleased to say that that's being renewed very soon. And we'll be working with them for a further 7 months in 5 London boroughs and also in areas of Essex. The work is needed. Children are confused. They hear some of the language that's used by some of our leaders, some of the language they pick up at home, racial slurs, which they then feel are acceptable to use because adults are saying them. And without the work of Show Race the Red Card, the work, this language, these thoughts, these opinions, they're not really challenged. Teachers still find it difficult to talk about these issues, but we have fantastic educators, role models who really do make a difference. We've just signed a deal with Sainsbury's, and through Sainsbury's support, we'll be able to send out resource packs for teachers to every single school in England. Now that's fantastic, and we can follow that up with training support as well. But every school in England will have information about workshops that they can do with children and how to talk to children about racism and to be anti-racist. Next Friday, on 22nd, is Wear Red Day, where everybody will be able to demonstrate their support to anti-racism, to wear red and to raise some funding as well. So it's a really busy time for us. I'm really proud to be on this panel and looking forward to any questions that are answered. We work with between 50 and 60,000 young people a year. That's an impressive figure, but in all honesty, it's not enough. So we need more funding, more support so we can get to more people in our communities and really continue to make a difference. But I thank all of the organisations here today who support us on a regular basis, including Stand Up to Racism. And as I say, we're really proud to be associated with you. So that's all I have to say now, but I'm looking forward to any questions that might come my way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really powerful, Steve. And I certainly echo your condolences to the family of the MP that's been killed. I think, you know, we mustn't forget that we're all humans and we have to care about each other. And I totally respect that. I love the idea of your workshops with MPs. We certainly had We had our local MP, our local government leaders, our Senedd members all sending in messages when we were doing our March the 20th event. But the workshops, that's a great idea. I think that's one we'll have to do some work on. And working with children is absolutely vital. And I think it's amazing the work that Show Racism the Red Card does. And Sunil from South Wales is actually joining us with work that we're continuing to do with Cardiff and Swansea at the moment. So we're working closely, which is great. So thank you very much for that. Shaka, it's an honour to have you with us. Former professional goalkeeper, as I've said, honorary president of Show Racism the Red Card. The amount of work that you do for Show Racism the Red Card is fantastic. And I'll hand over to you because I'm sure people want to hear what you've got to say.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to Stand Up to Racism for having me here. I'll follow Steve's lead and offer condolences and thoughts to the family and friends, the loved ones of David Amos. It underlines the importance of our continued efforts to fight against hate in all its form, be it subtle or be it overt. I think that is ultimately the lesson that we have to take as members of this community in our continued efforts against so much of our society that we continue to speak up and speak out against. I'm honored to be here as president of Show Racism the Red Card, an organization that was founded some 25 years ago. I'm wearing my shirt celebrating our 25th anniversary. It started on the back of a conversation around a racist incident that I was subject to. I was outside St. James's Park late one night. My wife was in the car filling up with petrol. A group of youths come walking down the hill outside St. James's Park and start shouting racist abuse at me. As they get closer, one of those youths recognized who I was, and they wanted to come over, ask for autographs, started chanting my name. I left as quickly as I could. The conversation I then had with Jed Greby, the co-founder and CEO of Show Racism the Red Card, was around what I felt was the duality of who I was, my existence there in the Northeast. As I put it, from 50 yards away, I was a Black man worthy of the most vile racist abuse. From 50 feet away, the same group of kids, of individuals, wanted to chant my name. I felt we could use that lesson. We could use the lessons learned within football dressing rooms to spread the message around education, around an understanding and an empathy for each other's, regardless of our differences, whether those differences are ethnic, are religious, are cultural, how we worship or how we don't, how we love. And from what started off as me, usually alongside one or two of my teammates, going into schools and speaking about our shared experiences in that Newcastle dressing room, we are now here boasting 25 years. Some 850,000 kids have been through one of our day-long workshops. And as Steve pointed out before me, we are still doing 50 to 60,000 kids a year. And those numbers are staggering to me. I come from Trinidad and Tobago, a country of 1.3 million people. And while we relish in where we are now, while we relish in those numbers, those statistics, I have to point out, I always go back to our founding. It was a group of footballers wanted to give back to our community, never thinking that we'd be having these discussions, never thinking that from those school visits, we'd be talking about an organization with the kind of numbers that I just mentioned, and Steve continues to show and represent up and down the United Kingdom. We're not only working in schools, we're now very involved with at corporate level, with employees, helping workplaces become more diverse, helping them become more understanding around equality and their continued cause for equality. And I think that for me is the underpinning of who we are, how we think about and how we keep our communities central to everything we do. It's tempting to disbelieve your own value, your own power as an individual, without and not recognizing the impact that you do. We often focus on the larger organizations and the bigger picture and the bigger bodies of work that are done. Yet the most value is found by us in individuals, giving of our time. There is no greater moral calling of us as people, as members of our community, to plant a tree in knowing that someone else in a future generation will enjoy its shade. I know I'm coming to the end of my time, Madam Chair, but if you could allow me just a moment, I would again like to echo Steve. Friday, 22nd of October, we're Red Day. It's our national day of raising awareness, of standing up against racism, of standing up against hate in all its forms. And now, just as a personal note, I am honored to be handing over to Neville Southall from a number of levels. From a very personal level, I admired Neville. I all but worship the ground that he walked on as a goalkeeper. And I looked at him for so much example as a young man growing up, as a young man still playing the game. So to be able to sit here and share a panel with him, it's bringing out the fan in me. But more to the point, after his career, he continues to be such an inspiration to me for the work that he does in his community. So unfortunately, I have to leave shortly, but I couldn't ask for more than to present Neville Southall to you. It means a lot to me personally, and I'm sure you'll get as much out of Neville and his work, what he has to say, as I have for virtually my entire life.
Thank you so much, Shaka. Thank you. That was lovely. I just want to pick up before I hand over to Neville, about you talking about it being player-led at the beginning of Show Racism the Red Card. And I think that's so important with Taking the Knee, the continuation of this kind of against all the odds, really, especially, you know, when we had the Euros and there was booing against the English players in particular. And yet the players have been the ones that have said, we want to continue with that. And I think that the work that those players are doing with their clubs is something that we need to honour and respect. And the 25 years of Show Racism the Red Card, what a wonderful thing to celebrate. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm sorry you have to leave, but as you've just said, we can hand over to the hero. That is Neville Southall. Neville, I'm sure everybody knows you. I'm sure they all know that you were a player for Everton and that you've played for Wales. But I'm also very aware that you've worked massively with a lot of disadvantaged children, that you do a lot of work behind the scenes. So it's going to be a pleasure to hear from you. I hand over to you, Neville.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Shaka and Steve, because they've inspired me whenever I've worked with Show Racism Red Card. It's been an eye-opener. My big problem is that we have the players and we have everybody at a lower level who's prepared to stand up and speak. Unfortunately, the people who run this country are not interested in racism. They're not interested in hitting it head on. The Prime Minister, I think, has obviously has said racist things in the past, but has never apologised. And I'd like to see him apologise or even go on a diversity course, which would be quite nice for him. Then we get round to UEFA and FIFA. And they've let racism go on and on and on for God knows how long. You know, I remember playing abroad and it was all sorts of chants. What I would like to see is that when they pick a World Cup or the European Championship venues, that the criteria must be that them countries have a fantastic policy on racism and equality and diversity. And I think that would be a good start. And anybody who broke that, like you've seen in some of the games where, you know, the English players have been booed, I would like to see them countries thrown out the tournament. Because if you pay £150,000 in a fine as a country, it's nothing. It's not a deterrent. The deterrent comes when you get kicked out of the competition, and you're kicked out of the competition, you can't come back the next year. Maybe that will actually get somebody off their bombs in now, UEFA or FIFA, to do something properly. And I think the only way you can do it, if you look at the criteria for World Cups, we've gone to countries where racism's rife, where homophobia is rife, and I think we need to look at it and have a different criteria than we award World Cups and European Championships to people who deserve it, because they've done the work at grassroots level and at the top. And at the moment, we seem to be driven by money, and they're not interested in all the other stuff. I think the players have done absolutely unbelievable to keep going with it, but I want to know what the FAs are doing. And the biggest problem for me is Show Racism Red Card should be fully funded by all the FAs. Because if you're serious about getting into schools and changing people's education, which it boils down to education, then I think we need to show Racism Red Card in every school. It should be on the curriculum. They should be in all the time. And I think what we're talking about is education, because when you ask somebody what racism is, nobody has a clue hardly. So it's really difficult to have a conversation, excuse me, because people don't know what it is. And I think we need to sit down and have a serious debate, and we need to have the politicians to have a serious debate about what is racism and how we're going to stop it. And I believe the language that they're using at the moment is the most divisive language I've ever heard from any politicians in my life. And also Farage and Tommy Robinson, those people who stir up trouble for their own ends. And what we've had at the moment is a prime minister who's got himself elected on sort of dividing the country. We've got Farage who's took his pension off the people that he doesn't like, and we've got Tommy Robinson who's just, for me, dangerous. They're the three most dangerous people we've had in our country for a long, long time. And what we need to do is stand up to these people, because no matter who you are, where you live, how old you are, your voice makes a massive difference. It can seem tiny to you that it won't make a difference, but just by speaking out that one time, you can make a massive difference to somebody's life. And I know, I'd love to see us work with some unions as well, because I work for Unison, and I would like to get into the workplace more. I would make sure that we could get into the schools more. But don't forget, whatever comes out of this day to day, one voice can make a massive difference, and you can be that one voice.
Thank you, Neville. That was really great. And I love the idea of FIFA funding Show Racism the Red Card. I think, maybe that's something really good to take from today. That's something that we should all be pushing for. The whole of the conference, you mentioned that our Prime Minister being racist, is about how do we defeat Johnson's racist offensive. This workshop in particular is about how we do it through football. And that's because football is so important in British society that it's really important we get it right, and that we educate fans and we help them to understand what racism is. But Neville, you are of course right. Unfortunately, we have a very right-wing government at the moment, and we're in a bubble here about football, but we need to take it far, far wider, and to make sure that ordinary people understand a bit more about what racism is, what it's about, and that it's not just people being hypersensitive, as people are often told. So thank you very much for that, Neville. I believe Howard Gayle is now with us, which is fantastic news. So I'm going to hand over to Howard. I hope that Neville, you'll be able to stay, and Steve's already said he's looking forward to some questions later, because we will come back to you later on if that's all right. Howard, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, first of all, again, can I apologise for joining a little bit late, but as I say,
no problem.
I run children's football teams on a Sunday, and run over a little bit late today. And
that's no problem.
Some really good points again from Neville. Like obviously, again, we played during the same era, and when you look back on life and you look back on the changes that have been made in relation to racism, it still keeps on raising its ugly head every year. We're still talking about the same issues, the same points, and the same people who are protracting the racism. And I've said for a very long time, and again, as I say, my good friend John Barnes again has pointed this out, is that racism is a problem for society. And football has been the leading light in trying to eradicate it from within its stadia on a Saturday afternoon, so that people can go and celebrate and join together and support their teams. But it seems that we're still talking about the same issues. I remember talking to Jed a number of years ago, not long after Red Card was formed, and they went to the government and to the footballing authorities and asked for fines of people and organisations to be donated into the education programme of Kick It Out and Red Card, and they were told no. So that shows you again from a government level and from a sports perspective, is there any real plan in trying to eradicate racism inside football and society, or are people using it for their own devices to divide and rule? Because that's what it is. But I also asked a question of why Show Racism Red Card and Kick It Out aren't one organisation, because if there's one thing that has always concerned me about this subject, is that it's a divisive mode. It's divide and rule, and this is another point in another circumstance where you've got two organisations that are working in the same direction, but they're not asked to join together the resources and the thing, because again, Red Card is prominent in education. It's been doing education in schools and youth clubs for a number of years, and Kick It Out, maybe their profile is within the sport itself. So really, again, as I say, for the future and how we can unite ourselves, I think that we have to look at a way of a funding stream or a funding pot that can fund both organisations again, working at this. Although again, as I say, the two separate organisations, they can still work together and be seen to be working together, because it's a question again that I get asked so many times about why is Red Card and Kick It Out two separate organisations working for the same cause. But racism again, it's a problem for society. Again, you can tell people again when we can hang all sorts of banners up and posters within our stadia about racism, and people they can go to match, keep their mouth shut, go back outside and go back to the normal life and go and sit in the pub and talk about niggers, coons, wogs, whatever. So it's a societal programme, and that's how we should tackle it. And education, Neville's right, education is the key. That's always been the key, because there are a lot of people that hang on to the vehicle of racism, but they don't really know what it is. They're just sheep. The herd immunity. They follow what other people say, what other people do, without doing any research about culture, about their own culture. A lot of people don't know about their own culture, but protract this racism view through their own families and through their own communities. So it's the change again, as I say, has to be a joint approach from everybody. As I say, Neville made some really good points there, is that you ask the question again, really, whether a government really wants these changes to happen, because what we are as a nation, we're divided. Again, the pros and the cons. It's a motion that's been used for quite a long time now. Here we are again, as I say, I've been campaigning and talking about racism from the very first time I came into football with Liverpool, and the racism that I received from within that club, which is now a giant. And you see the transformation now is that most of the team are black within the Liverpool Football Club now. Most teams now carry black players, large black squads. And again, in our day, it was kind of like spot the black man, not only on the football pitch, but also again on the terraces. And this is something else again that we don't really look at, is that the experience is bad for players who are in racial innuendos and shouts being come from the terraces. But imagine what it's like as a fan, as a young child who's going to a football game for the first time, and he or she is subject to some idiots sat around them and calling out at players on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Howard, for that. I certainly agree that tackling racism is good for society, is good for all of us as human beings, white, black, gay, straight, whatever. We need to fight racism and discrimination. Working together has to be the way forward. And certainly when we down here in South Wales started working with Cardiff City and Swans together before March the 20th, United Nations Anti-Racism Day, there had been a crowd of people that were trying to encourage others in Swansea to boo players taking the knee. They had to stand outside the stadium because of COVID, of course, and they had links with Tommy Robinson. So, it's interesting, his name has come up today. And their whole project was about trying to encourage others to join them so that they would divide the non-racist and the racist fans. And I'm very pleased to say that I think their voice has very much been squashed at the Swans, and Swans and Cardiff have worked together on that. I hope you can stay with us, Howard, because when we've heard from people on the floor who will be speaking to us, there might be some questions coming up, and perhaps you could sum up at the end. Yeah. Thank you so much. Shaka, have you left us? I think Shaka's gone, so it was great to hear from him. Okay, we were due to hear from Tracy Brown. She's the co-chair of Chelsea Pride and a representative voice for lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender Chelsea football supporters and their friends and families. Unfortunately, Tracy was taken ill last night, so we wish her well, and we hope that she'll be better soon. But she has asked me to read this out. She sent this to me this morning. Tracy tells us she's co-chair of Chelsea Pride, the LGBTQ+ supporters group for Chelsea FC. I'm also on the committees of the Rainbow Wall, Welsh National LGBTQ supporters group, and Pride in Football. Firstly, I'm sorry I can't be with you today due to illness, but I wanted to say a couple of words. I myself, being a white disabled lesbian, have faced discrimination directed to me for most of my life. However, I will always stand strong in my fight to kick all forms of discrimination out of not just football, but society. We at Chelsea Pride, although an LGBTQ+ supporters group, believe that allies are incredibly important. We need our allies, and we stand strong as allies against all other forms of discrimination. We don't just say words to tick a box, but champion our fight against all forms of hate with actions. We work closely with Chelsea FC in the fight to kick discrimination out of football. The No to Hate campaign makes it very clear there can be no place in our game nor our society for racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, and/or any other forms of hate. On taking the knee, we as a Chelsea Pride community believe everyone should continue to support taking the knee, as it highlights the racial inequality in the game and also supports the Black Lives Matter movement. I myself and Chelsea Pride will continue to champion our fight against racism, anti-Semitism, and of course discrimination against the LGBTQ+ community. We will proudly work with our club and the footballing world to promote a game where everyone is welcome. Thank you, Tracy, for sending us that, despite your not being at all well yesterday. It's really brilliant. Thank you to the speakers for all your contributions. We've heard about Show Racism the Red Card Annual Wear Red Day. I'm glad that's been plugged so much. 22nd of October, details at theredcard.org. 19th of March 2022, we'll see events and actions around the world for UN Anti-Racism Day, and that's to help build actions in Britain. Please join, share the Facebook event posted in chat, and that was certainly what started us as Cardiff and Swans fans to work together last season. So, have a look at some of the things that we've done. Our campaigning works are only possible because of your support, so please consider by donating by clicking the Join or Donate tab on our website. In January, Stand Up to Racism will organise a national event marking Holocaust Memorial Day to unite against anti-Semitism and fascism and say loudly and clearly, never again. To find your local Stand Up to Racism group, visit standuptoracism.org.uk and check the list on the left of the page. And at 5 p.m, it would be lovely if people could join Diane Abbott, Gary Young, and a host of leading anti-racists for our closing rally. And you can join on YouTube, Facebook, or the Zoom webinar. Check your email or our Twitter for details. I'd like to pick up on something about the support that players need. You mentioned about the terrible abuse that the black players had when they missed the penalties. And I remember sitting there watching the game and my heart nearly broke, because I knew that they would get far worse abuse than any white person would get if they'd missed the penalties, although they would have got, you know, abuse too, that it was going to be far, far worse. I was heartened to read what Marcus Rashford said, that the support that he got after that really helped him through it. And I wonder sometimes if people like the young man that put the awful things on Facebook, those awful, vile images that you were talking about a few minutes ago, if he had to meet somebody like Marcus Rashford, he'd see him as a human being, and maybe that would change his mind. Because let's face it, people like Marcus Rashford are doing amazing things to persuade people that actually it's just wrong to be racist. I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions. We will certainly continue the fight. As I said earlier, Britain is steeped in football. It's so important in British society. And I'm going to kind of go back to the Rivals on the Pitch United Against Racism, because the last line says, "We believe the game we all love has the power to influence, the power to make a difference, and more importantly, the power to change. Rivals on the Pitch United Against Racism, it's time for change." Let's all go forward. Make sure that we harass our clubs, make sure that we do feel it's taken up. Let's work with fans liaison officers, work with Show Racism the Red Card, work with the hate crime officers, and make sure that we don't ever feel that any person has to feel hate or fear going into a football game again. And it will spread out to society. What we are doing does help the rest of society. Thank you to the tech guys for keeping it all running smoothly. Thank you very much to all the speakers. Thanks to everyone who's listened in and who's spoken. I'm really proud to have been part of this event. Thanks from the heart. Together stronger. Bye.